of News 5. And there you go. There's Robbie Alampay, who's now looking up. Okay, there you go. And there's Robbie Alampay, who is very well dressed tonight for the third night of One News.
Good
evening. Good evening.
What are the big stories tonight? Well, of course, I suppose most people are leading off with the passing away of Eduardo Wangco Jr.
Yes. Ang dami-dami ng review. Yes, and the resignation. And the investigation of DOH.
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 Initiated by the ombudsman.
Yeah, that's motu proprio, huh?
Yeah, it's motu proprio.
It's motu proprio. I mean, they took it on their own. But I don't know, if you read differently, pero the initial reading I saw, parang they were looking at the delays in the purchase of PPEs, the delays in the releases of benefits for frontliners. Pero so far, I haven't seen any indication that they're going to look into other aspects, like, for example, corruption or misuse of government funds. Parang they're looking more into delays and negligence, rather than, I suppose, rather than misuse of funds.
Fact-finding pa lang naman daw kasi yon on the response. So, hindi pa siya actually a criminal investigation. Although kung may makita siguro, doon papunta yun. It's an investigation agency. Pero wala rin kami story na pinabanggit ng
and it's unusual. They're doing it during a pandemic, while the department's in the process of still going after the pandemic. They're doing an investigation. I wonder how they will do the investigation. Will they do virtual interviews or?
Siguro. At sabi naman DOH, they will cooperate daw fully and they will be very transparent. Yan ang nasasabi nila, di ba? So, tingnan natin kung anong mangyayari in the coming days.
Na sabay pa sila yung kay Leon, kayong ombudsman, para, di ba, para ang gulo ng Department of Health. May ganun.
Kasi
si Special Advisor Tony Leon.
It's very difficult to read into what's happening in, well, not the health sector, but all the top players and giving advice. Hindi po alam kung sino pinapakinggan.
Yeah. Baka sila na yung, parang sila na yung nagtuturoan ngayon, ano?
And if you're speculating, as most Filipinos like to do, na kampo ni ganyan at kampo ni ganito, di ba? On the one hand, yung isang kampo pinag-resign, yung isang kampo pinapa-imbestigahan. So who has the, di ba? If that's how you wanna assess it, di ba? It really leaves people a lot of room to not have confidence on beyond the personalities involved. Who's going to be leading this program?
Baka maging consultant na si Dr. Leatsa ng ombudsman.
Ganun ba? Ikaw, Ami, Yun ba ilalabas ng Star bukas?
Malalim. Hindi ko nakita yun. Hindi ko nakita yung angulo yun.
Teka. Titingnan ko lang. Baka may story na yung Star doon. Teka.
Baka may nag-tweet na sa'yo, Ami.
Pero yung other side of the pandemic ang pag-uusapan natin ngayon.
Yeah. We're looking at the finances, the economy, and among other things, of course, of course, the plan as well to have online businesses registered and as well taxed. So let's bring in our guests.
Pasok na natin siya.
Yeah. Joining us tonight is one of our favorite resource persons, si Finance Assistant Secretary Tony Lambino. Sir, good evening and welcome back to the Chiefs.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back.
Good evening.
Yes, sir. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, sir. Sir, let me start off with this. Kasi a few weeks ago, there was an announcement that the BIR expects all online businesses that have been doing activity even during the pandemic have until July 31, if I remember correctly, to register with the BIR and, of course, to as well pay taxes. Now, there's been a bit of pushback on that issue, but let's remove all the noise first. First of all, syempre, meron diyang exemptions eh. I mean, even provided in the train law, I think if you earn below 250,000, you are exempted even if you're online, di ba? And
That's right.
pangalawa, in principle, talaga, government has to require anybody who makes money or who earns to pay taxes, whether you're online or offline. So that these are givens.
That's right. In fact, this is really a reminder RMC, Revenue Memorandum Circular. It's RMC 60-2020. If you want to look for it online, it's posted as well so that people can read it for themselves. Ngayon, as you said, Ed, it's not new. No, it's a reminder because all businesses are really required to register. And you're also right about the exemptions. In fact, the train law already increased the exemption for, I guess, the smaller earners, 250,000 or below for a year, and you're exempted from paying taxes. Also, if your revenues are 3 million or less, and then you're exempted from VAT. No? So those rules apply whether you're online or offline.
Marami
Yes, sir.
ba?
Asec,
Sir,
clarification lang po, yung 250,000 threshold, that assumes that that's yun lang ang income mo. What if I have a daily, what if I have another source of income? Hindi naman malaki yung kinikita ko. I use this precisely to augment. And then that's all coming together beyond 250,000, or is that the 250,000 just refers specifically to your online business?
No, it's combined na because when you register with the BIR, then and this is done at the RDO, no, you'll declare that you're now a mixed earner. So you're earning from, let's say, what you were mentioning earlier, Roby. I think you were referring to compensation through employment, no? And then you add to your income through, let's say, online selling. Then if you breach the threshold, then yes. It's different from those who earn less, no. But again, in 2017, those tax rates were adjusted through the train law. So actually, taxpayers are facing lower tax rates now than they did before 2018.
Well, sir, I bring up the pushback kasi
Talking about how many taxpayers are we talking about when we're talking about the exempted ones? Marami ba yun? Yung
Marami yan.
250,000 a year?
Can you say that again? Sorry, Luchi.
Marami ba yon yung exempted na kumikita lang ng less than 250,000 a year?
Well, that's around 20,000 a month. So marami. A lot of people come into the workforce at that level. And again, it's also just a fairness issue, no? That people are treated the same by the national tax system, whether their income is from brick and mortar type activity versus online activity.
Well, sir, let me go back to the question kanina. I pointed out na may pushback doon, and also you also brought up the idea na we have to be fair to everybody when it comes to taxing. There's an emotional cost there din kasi, which is not necessarily unreasonable. Some people are saying na yes, everybody should pay taxes, but how come we are not? They're saying we are not as proseguido in going after other people. For example, the Pogos. I'm sure you've heard about this several times already. Yung 50 billion na hindi para nakakolekta from the Pogos, that's one aspect. The other aspect is this. In March, yung Senate hearing, the BIR pointed out that only of the 11 Pogos that are licensed, only 3 are paying license fees, and the other 9 have refused to pay license fees, and we don't seem to be pushing back on that. So on the issue of fairness, bakit ganun daw? Parang hindi even masyado.
Okay, thank you for asking that question because I was part of the team on several occasions that closed down a few POGO service operators, and in one case, a licensee. No? In fact, I recall we would meet up very early in the morning. There were media there also for transparency, and then we would serve the closure order on these POGO service operators on several occasions, and in one case, a licensee. Now, so those things have been done. No? The Secretary of Finance, Secretary Dominguez, ordered an interagency group to actually go after these POGOs already. And because of that, there are two components here. On the withholding tax on the income of the employees, we've had a pretty big jump, no? More than 100% increase in 2019 compared to 2018. What we're really dealing with that you're talking about is the other component, which is the franchise fee, no, the 5% tax. Now, we're really experiencing some pushback here, no? And when I say we, particularly the BIR, because there are POGO licensees that don't have a physical presence in the Philippines. They don't have a physical office, and therefore they're claiming that they're not liable for the 5% franchise fee. They're resisting it with all their might, no? And of course, there was the Solgen opinion that they're using, no, to defend this position. So we are going to keep looking for ways to collect this 5% franchise fee. And actually, there's some draft legislation that already seeks to clarify that issue, no, whether they are liable, and we believe that they really are, because they earn their money here, no? They have service providers here. They have multiple service providers in some cases doing.
Yes, sir. How much are we talking about here? How much are we talking about here? When you're talking about, I think a 9 out of the 11, 8 out of 11. How many are talking about? How much are we talking about?
Yeah, there was that initial number, but actually, I think there are around 60, no? And there are around 10 that have a physical presence here. One of them, this is among the licensees, not among the service providers. For the service providers, there are more than 200. So the goal really is to clarify the regulatory environment and the law around this issue so that we have a stronger leg to stand on when we go after that 5%.
Yes, sir. But I mean, how much? How much?
Just to clarify, wait, dun lang doon sa regulatory environment that you're saying. To be clear, are you saying that there's something stopping you precisely because some things still need to be clarified?
Well, they're refusing to pay, Robbie, because they say they don't have a physical office in the Philippines and therefore they're not liable for the 5% franchise tax. We believe that they are because they earn money here and they operate here through their service providers. So they should be treated the same as the licensees, the POGO licensees that actually have physical offices.
So sa ngayon, are you keeping track how many POGOs have resumed operations? Kasi pinayagan na sila, di ba? They were classified as BPOs. Pero parang wala pa ako nakikitang nagre-resume yata ng operation. Mga ilan na kaya?
Part of the agreement or a part of the rules now for them to reopen is to pay the franchise fee.
Okay. So only 3 yung
So there are 2 components here. You're asking how much, yes?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, no, I just wanted to clarify that there are 2 components here. On the withholding, we've made a lot of progress, no? A big increase in the collections. It's in this franchise fee where we're still finding ways to really clamp down and get them to pay this.
Yes, sir. But can you give us the pesos and cents? For example, in terms of franchise fees, how much could we have collected or could we be collecting versus how much we're getting? The same goes with the withholding taxes. How much are we getting now compared to last year?
Well, the 50 billion that people are talking about, it's really a combination of an estimate that the Department of Finance and BIR have shared publicly, and sort of a rough back of the envelope computation on the franchise fees. No? So on the withholding, we estimate that there should be around 24 billion per year. We're not there yet. No, we're not even halfway there yet. But there's been a lot of movement there. No, so last year I believe the number, and I'm not sure again what the particular components are in this, but I know that we collected 6.42 billion from POGOs last year. The other component, again, is the franchise fee. Those that are paying are those that have physical offices because we can actually interact with them here in the Philippines. So that's the situation. We want to get to above that number. In the Senate hearing, and I'm a little I am a little reticent numbers because again, this was a rough back of the envelope computation. But with that caveat, I think the number was around 17 to 18 billion from franchise fees. And then combine that with the 24, they kind of rounded it up big time to 50. So
Okay,
again, the 50 was kind of rough.
Asek, ako personally, I won't hold you to any particular figure. Nandun pa rin ako dun sa basically, as you said, the refusal to pay. And nandun pa rin ako dun sa basic foundation of the agreement and the terms by which they were allowed to come into the country and invest in the country. Looking back, are we saying that there were things within the regulatory environment that was not actually clear to both sides, or are you saying it should have been clear? We're surprised why this is being brought up.
Well, I guess what they're really trying to find is a loophole, no? And we're saying that that loophole does not exist. They claim it does. So that's why we have this situation. Now, in terms of the PAGCOR franchise fee that they are paying the 2% to PAGCOR. No? But on top of that, we are insistent and of a very clear mind that they owe also the 5% franchise fee on top of the 2%.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking, just to rephrase, I think what I'm really asking is, are we sure that we did not open too soon, too fast, too recklessly to this industry before now coming to issues like this?
No, well, we were very clear about our position from the beginning, but then again, no, as I mentioned earlier, it's public record. I guess it's okay to mention it. There was a Solgen opinion that was sought, no? And the Solgen opinion is something that the POGOs are now using to defend their position. So it's very clear that when it comes to tax matters, the commissioner of the BIR is the authority, no? And of course with the supervision of the Department of Finance in various matters. So again, no, it's what we believe will be a temporary standoff because we can clarify this through legislation. In fact, Joey Salceda has already made very clear in his draft bill that there are no ifs or buts. No, the whether you are locally or domestically located or located in a foreign jurisdiction, you owe that 5% franchise fee. And this draft bill makes that very, very clear.
Well, Asec, kaya tinutulak yung POGO because the government needs revenue, especially now na mukhang kailangan pang expand yung social amelioration program. In the meantime, habang wala pa nakokolekta, are you thinking of any additional, apart from online sellers, of course? Because there was a clarification today from the BIR na yung sa online selling, they're going after only the mga platforms, the online platforms. Hindi naman daw talaga yung maliliit na negosyo. So what other revenue sources are you considering at this point?
Well, right now, we're not really focused on the revenue sources yet. We will get to that. No? And there are several bills that we're studying very carefully. A number of them, again, filed by Congressman Joey, because he's the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. In fact, what we're looking at right now is even revenue eroding measure, which we discussed the time I was on the show, create bill. In fact, with that as the priority, we're looking at a big reduction in the revenue so that private enterprise can use that money more efficiently than if you passed it through a government program. Right, so that's why it's 42 billion that we will leave in the hands of the private sector just this year, in the second half of 2020, and then 625 billion over the next 5 years. So we're really focused on even a big reform that is a revenue eroding measure. That being said, there are two more packages in the tax reform program. The package 3 is actually something that will help local governments generate revenues, and that is the land rationalization reform. And then you have the financial taxes. Now that one naman is revenue neutral. But for the local governments, the package 3 of the tax reform program will help them generate revenues.
How has tax collection been so
the land valuation.
Asec, how has tax collection been so far?
Well, the last I've seen, it's around 50% lower than last year. but also because we did defer tax payments to this month. No? So let's look at the new numbers, because these are taxes that are being collected from revenues from 2019. So in terms of the final number, we're not expecting something that much lower. However, we did defer the tax collection for a couple of months.
What are your plans to make up for what we foresee will be a great income loss for many ordinary taxpayers?
Well, if it's an income loss on the part of the taxpayer, we need to help private enterprise recover, retain their workers, and restart their profitability at the soonest possible time. And the way to do that is really to make sure that they have the resources available. And in the survey that we conducted in early April, it was very clear, from the survey results, from the small and medium enterprises, what they need is access to credit. And so that's why in the recovery bill, there is a portion there that really tries to open the tap, for small and medium enterprises, and that will allow government financial institutions to support smaller banks all over the country by being wholesale, meaning rural banks and smaller banks can lend out to their clients, of course, based on the prudential requirements of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. And then Land Bank and DPP can actually buy a large percentage of those loans, so that the smaller banks have even more money to lend out. No? So those are some of the initiatives that we are putting in place and that we are working on with our legislative leaders, for this economic stimulus bill that hopefully will be passed over, if not during the Sine Die adjournment, then when Congress comes back in July.
Kumusta yung online tax filing? I want to follow up on Luci's question. Kumusta yung online tax filing? Kasi puro online eh. Did you get a lot of complaints or requests for help, or was it generally glitch-free?
Oh, Amy, I'll have to get back to you on that. I actually don't have the data with me, but I'll make sure to ask BIR how that was going. We helped them promote the online tax filing because I think a lot of people needed help in the step by step, especially if they were doing it for the first time. And it's only this year really that there were many options for payment. Previously, it was quite limited. So this year, we could really do soup to nuts tax filing and payment, from downloading the forms, filling them out, submitting them online, and then using digital payment platforms to settle, if there was any tax due. So I'll check how it went. But these tools were made available this year. And let's check also, because the deadline for the annual income tax return just closed very, very recently.
Yeah.
Asec, just to round us back to where we started, which is the matter of regulating, registering, and for that matter, taxing online businesses. Yeah, and at the same time, now we're talking about incentivizing and trying to pump prime the economy again. One of the areas, of course, the biggest area where people are shifting to, they're seeing some potential here, at least some room to maneuver, is in fact online, is in fact e-commerce. What do you say on the side of incentivizing innovation and investments for business online to counterbalance how people perceive any regulatory environment that's going to develop for online business?
Well, Robbie, the regulatory environment really needs to have enabling mechanisms as well, and in addition to the revenue generating tools for government. So in the economic recovery plan, there is, of course, a section on digitalization of various services. And that means we need to improve the infrastructure backbone of our connectivity, and that includes digital, not just the build program that we know of that has to do with physical infrastructure. Now we also need to build the infrastructure of our digital connectivity, and we need to do this much faster, not just for commerce, but also for education, for healthcare, and for other services, including subsidies and payouts, as we've discussed before. So the language is there. But of course, we would need to defer on the details, to the agencies that will actually implement these digitalization efforts.
Asec, we just received a $450 million loan, is it, from the ADB? Can you tell us more about this, or it will be used? Who's going to benefit from it?
Well, there are several loans that have been in the pipeline. In fact, there was also a loan signing just yesterday with JICA, the Japan aid agency. So
Yes.
ADB, JICA, World Bank, AIIB, they're all stepping up. No? And just to give a sense of the total portfolio, Luci, I think the largest component here really is budget support and infrastructure. There are also loans that are dedicated to improving healthcare and education. But really, the total target is more than 400 billion pesos, no? In terms of bridging the budget deficit. So that's where the development partners will be coming in. But we also have, of course, domestic sources, no, for borrowing. So it's all of that that's combining in order to cover the deficit. It's part of the strategy, at least for this year, because again, we're really not expecting to go after new revenue sources right away. We really need to wait for the economy to recover, for businesses to recover, and then we'll start focusing on that. As I mentioned earlier, the idea is really to pump prime, no? And that includes the borrowings that you mentioned, as well as the various, I guess, sweeps that we've done in terms of the GOCCs, no, in terms of the various budgets that the DBM has been able to identify, as sources for providing support to the most vulnerable and to businesses.
Okay. If you were to
Well,
allocate, how much of the loans will be for budget support, and how much of it in percentage will be used for subsidies?
Well, there's really no mutual exclusivity between the two, because some of the some of the budget support does mention that we are able to use this to help the most vulnerable through subsidy programs. So what budget support really allows us to do is to be flexible, but at the same time, we must be very prudent and responsible with these resources, because we will be paying this back, and our children will be paying this back. No? So what we need to do is make sure that what we spend on, whether they're subsidies or infrastructure programs or digital connectivity projects, really have an impact in terms of the welfare of the people and and responding to the immediate needs, or also to projects that have pretty good ROI, in terms of the economic internal rate of return. So it's a combination of all of these, really, and it's a balancing act, Luchi, that we're working on. Or was it Amy who asked the question? I'm sorry. But what we really want to do is to make sure that we keep within the limits that the economic managers have set, which is really, to be specific, to be within 9% or thereabouts of debt relative to GDP, and to stay within the 50%. I'm sorry, 9% for the deficit, the budget deficit, and around not more than 50% for our debt to GDP. That will keep us in the median of our peers, whether it's in the ASEAN region or countries that are in similar credit rating status. And because of that, then that makes us a reliable development partner and a responsible borrower. So we want to stay within these parameters, so that we're able to manage our economy in a way that our children and our children's children can still benefit, from the good credit rating that we have.
Right.
Well, Asec, before we let you go, can I just squeeze in one more question about the collectibles from the Pogos? I sort of get the impression that we're in a standoff with them as far as the licensing fees are concerned, and that we're basically powerless to collect from them. Does this mean that we really have to wait for a new law to come out before we can collect these license fees from these other Pogos? And of course, this would not be retroactive, I suppose.
Well, that would be very. That would be what do you call this? Much that would improve the situation by a lot. No, if we are able to do it through legislation. But as I said, there are various tools that are being used. So, for instance, for the Pogo licensee that did have a physical office, I was with the team that actually closed them down, no, until they paid. And they paid very quickly, by the way. It was in a matter of days. The other thing that, well, you know how these things go, no? If they're closed down, the gamblers start getting very antsy because they can't access their money, and so they pay
And
very
that's what it
quickly.
takes. Mhm.
And so, yeah, even for the Pogo service providers, when we closed them down, the agreements were reached within 24 to 48 hours, no? And the
Yes, sir.
checks were submitted
But
very quickly. Now, in terms of the licensees that are abroad, well, we now have a situation where we've required that they pay the license fee before they be allowed to reopen. So let's see how this plays out over the next few weeks.
Can't we just close down their service? What do you call that? The service providers, if they don't pay the license fees, and that forces them to pay the license fees, like what you just did with your physical office.
Well, BIR was very, very careful. No, also we have to make sure that we have very strong legal basis for doing the shutdowns. So they really made sure that they had a violation, not that they could point to before they actually issued the closure order. So BIR was the task force or the strike force lead when it came to these closures.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Asec Tony Lambino, one of our favorite resource persons. Again, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me
Salamat po.
again. Good evening po.
Good evening, sir. We will just pause for a break, so please stay with us.
Welcome back to Chiefs here on One News. Telco giant PLDT recently announced a launch of a dual tranche $600 million denominated bond. Total orders oversubscribed by 17 times. Joining us for more on this development is PLDT Chief Financial Officer Annabel Chua. Ms. Chua, welcome to the Chiefs.
Hello, good evening, Robbie.
Ma'am, this is the first time in 18 years that PLDT has returned to the bond market, to the U.S. bond market. We're getting the reports, seems to be very, very successful, $600 million, oversubscribed, more than $10 billion, no, more than 70 times oversubscribed. Ma'am, before we get into the details of why you went back, why PLDT went back to the bond market, what does this mean for PLDT? And more importantly, what does this mean for investors' perception of the Philippines?
Yeah, Robbie, we are, of course, extremely pleased with the results that we got and the overwhelming support and interest from the investor community. As you know, this was really pretty much sold to the international market. And therefore, it's a vote of confidence, not just in PLDT, but also in the prospects of our country.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're asking this because obviously we're in the middle of a crisis, a global crisis. PLDT, in fact, I mean, your capex was slashed by, I mean, I think down to a third for capex. You did go into this partly to refinance maturing loans for this year and next, but also for capex. Give us an idea on the capital expenditure side. What are you going to use this money for?
So, Robbie, to clarify lang, we originally had a budget of 83 billion for the year. And the reason why it's reduced by 20 to 25% is because of the constraints put on us during this ECQ periods, right? Where our people are unable to go out and roll out and do the installation just simply because of the lockdown restrictions, as well as some of the supply chain issues. Having said that, we are trying to reinstate things back to close to normal situation, and our focus really is to develop more our infrastructure to serve the growing data demand for people. So we all know everybody's been at home, working from home, studying from home. So the availability of their data connection is even more important during this period. So we are really committed to serve that requirement, be it for individuals, homes, enterprises, even schools and other communities.
Yeah, give us an idea if you don't mind. Obviously, we do all anticipate and we do all expect that there was a surge in demand and need for data and access to data and for people to go online. That surge, does that represent a new baseline for your customer base, or do you think it will settle down to something, as you said, more normal? Or is this surge in fact representative of the new normal in terms of the demand and need for data?
Well, our traffic grew by about 25% during this period. But that is also reflective of a trend that has been starting for quite a number of years already, right? So if you look at it versus last year, it's doubled. If you look at it 2 years ago, it's practically 5 times, right? So that's really a strong trend that will persist and continue. And that reflects also the kind of population we have, where Filipinos really love to be online, where effectively everybody has to go to the internet now to stay connected. So that's really part of our lives already today, right, Robbie?
And Ms. Chua, on August 24, I think the government is pushing through with the blended learning mode, and it will be using a lot of internet connectivity. What's the capability of the telecommunications companies now, or specifically the PLDT group, to provide that kind of service?
Yeah. Well, our enterprise team has really been in close touch with both the government and Department of Education side, as well as with various schools across private and public schools, to discuss a lot of the requirements. So we're starting to enter into arrangements with some of these schools like UST, Ateneo, etc., to be able to serve their requirements specifically. And then, but there's also a broader scale requirement that is being discussed with the Department of Education.
But you can say that the telecommunications companies are ready for this, for this blended learning mode?
I guess there are many parts of it. Yes, we are getting ready for it from the connectivity side, as well as trying to provide, let's say, the learning. They have this all these learning management systems. We're trying to arrange for catching all of this locally. So there are packages already that our enterprise have already offered to various schools to be able to serve that requirement. But it also goes beyond that, right? So you have the schools uh, as a customer, but you also have the students, the teachers, all over, right? So at the moment, PLDT, we do cover 96% of our population. But of course, the level of requirements differ from area to area, right? So we continue to expand our network and to provide more capacity as we expect that the demand for data will continue to surge, right?
Ma'am, how much of the 600 million will be used to pay for debt, and how much of it will be used to strengthen the telco infra?
So approximately 70% of the issue will be used to refinance or pay off the debt that are maturing this year, balance of this year and next year. So about 30% approximately to partially finance our capex, right? So our capex is also funded principally by internal cash that we generate from our operations, and then this funding will supplement that.
Okay. Now, ma'am, beyond PLDT and talking about the private sector, give us an idea on what is the mindset right now for the remainder of the year and for beyond 2020. What is the mindset? What is the stance of the private sector right now? Are you looking for growth just to stabilize, to get back to a certain level? So what is the positioning right now for the rest of the year and beyond 2020?
I guess I'll start with us in PLDT first. For us, we've really seen, the necessity of our service for, for people, right? Because they're at home, they're working from home, and enterprises. So we are committed to do whatever we can to serve. So it's, of course, there are adjustments that everybody has to make, given that this pandemic is really something that nobody expected to happen and in such a big way, right? So everybody had to adjust in a very short and heightened period, right? So that acceleration probably gave rise to the need to look at how we do things. For example, in PLDT, how we've been talking about digital transformation, it put extreme pressure to really make it happen quicker. So for us, I think we continue to view that there is demand for connectivity. We continue to invest. We continue to push that we be able to provide service across the consumers who are using the mobile phones, to the people who are at home who need a fiber connection, to enterprises, even to our OFW communities, right? So it's a mindset to try to provide the service during this period that is what has motivated the people at PLDT.
Okay,
I understand you're cutting your capex from 83 billion to around 60 billion for 2020. Is that right? How do you reconcile this cut with the need to push more infrastructure because of the need for more connectivity?
No, it wasn't really a cut in the sense that we wanted to cut. It was more that we had no choice during the past few months where we could literally not go out and install and do a lot of
Mm.
things, right? So it was
Mhm.
that. So for us, we look at it more as it's pushback in terms of timing because you lost, a few months of activity. So
Uh-huh.
that's really what
Okay.
it is, right? Yeah.
Okay, Miss Annabel Chua will just pause for a break. Don't go away. We'll be back.
Welcome back, the Chiefs. We are still with PLDT CFO Annabel Chua. Ma'am, kanina po, we were talking about the surge in demand for data, the surge in the presence of people online, and of course, the surge in online services on the backs of
Tapos nawala si Robbie.
Roby. Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Ako,
Robbie, okay.
Okay, yeah. Ma'am Annabel, for those of us who are not very conversant on bonds and issuance of bonds, what is the most remarkable thing about this latest issuance of bonds by a company?
Well, we're extremely proud because we achieved several milestones with this. First, 30-year issue by a non-government entity from the Philippines. So we were able to issue for 30 years. Second, it's a very low coupon, which is effectively low cost for us, but record low coupons in terms of the rate we achieve. And then the
By
70
interest rates, right?
interest rate. So it's the lowest ever coupon for a 10-year and 30-year issuance by a Philippine corporate. Uh, and also, of course, the overwhelming demand that there were 10.2 billion of orders vis-a-vis the 600 million size of the issue.
And what influenced these figures? What were the primary basis for setting the figures, the tenure, the tenor, the coupon?
So first of all, from a PLDT perspective, we were looking at diversifying our funding source. We have been accessing the local bank market for the last couple of years. So we thought it was a good time to go out to the international market. And as you said earlier, it's been 18 years since we did that. We saw that U.S. Treasury rates and interest rates were at historic low levels. So that was an attractive option for us. So then secondly, people look at what is called a credit rating, right? So
Yes.
for PLDT, we have maintained credit ratings with S&P and Moody's, and we have been rated investment grade, similar to the sovereign. So that was another factor that influenced the investors. Third is, of course, we felt that we had a good story to tell. So even as everybody's very concerned about the pandemic, we felt that the business remained to be a very critical business, and that there were many developments where we were able to respond to the needs of the time. So basically, at the end, in terms of a process, they start by asking people to listen to us, our story, and this was all done digitally. And one day of our non-VR investor meetings and presentations, which were all delivered via Zoom. In the past, you would fly to Hong Kong, Singapore, London, but in this case,
Yeah.
we were able to do all these meetings virtually. So after hearing our story, then we gave the following day an indication of how much we were prepared to pay. So there's an initial price guidance that was given in the morning, but after like 45 minutes, we received a lot of interest by way of orders that were being placed in Asia, and Europe had not yet opened. So during the course of the day, we agreed that we could try to test the pricing by even tightening what we were offering, and the order book just continued to grow. So we were extremely proud of how the interest in an issuer like ourselves and from the Philippines has been received so well by the international community.
Do you think that this will
Ma'am.
trailblaze the way for other corporations in the Philippines?
Yeah, of course, there have been all these very stellar names from the Philippines who have accessed the markets over the couple of years, right? ICTSI just did a deal actually last week. And then there is another issuer that is in the market as we speak. And I think there are other people or other corporates lined up to go as well. So I think it's also the attractive market conditions. And so hopefully that milieu continues in the next few weeks or months for everybody.
What would be the greatest uncertainty or fear that a company like PLDT faces at this point when there seems to be no sight of any solution to the pandemic right now, at least.
Well, yeah, we really don't know, right? When the vaccine will be there, right? So of course, it's kind of a different way of working, a different way of dealing with business operations as we speak, right? So that's really what we're faced with, everyone, and we just are waiting for the time when things become, I guess, more normal for everyone, right?
Well, at this point,
Ma'am,
what has been the most negative impact of the pandemic on the company? Because you have given us a lot of good news so far. Has there been any negative impact at all on the company?
Well, we've seen some of the smaller business have to like shut down or downscale. So there are those customers of ours who are suffering, and because of that, they would effectively have to downscale and even ask us for reprieve or even disconnect their services. Right. So there's those part of the economy who are affected, and any company in the Philippines is not immune from that, right? If the economy is doing well, everybody does well. If the economy doesn't do well, everybody's affected. Nobody's immune.
But the surge in online connectivity, didn't that make up for whatever was lost? The surge in online connection.
Yeah. Well, the usage, some of it is effectively, I guess, directly translatable to revenue. Some of them are really more at this point, not completely paid for, right? But so net, I think when we look at it from what happened to us, of course, there was a moderation in our revenues during the ECQ period, and then we've started to see things recover during the second half of April, going into May, and then we're happy to note that things are getting to, for us at least, into the pre-ECQ levels. So net, I think the revenues for us in the second quarter will be lower than what we saw in the first quarter pre-ECQ, but we probably can still show growth versus last year.
Yeah, okay. No, ma'am, not on the revenue side, but just on the investment side. As we all know, PLDT was in fact in investment mode, particularly in its infrastructure, upgrading the infrastructure, expanding it, but that was before pa nag COVID. Now that we've seen this surge in the capex that you're projecting, particularly with this bond float also, was there an adjustment in your projections on what needs to be spent for, or upgraded or expanded sa infrastructure?
That's a continuing investment that we're making in our network to make sure that it remains good quality and it can serve that data demand, right? So every year we look at the forecast for data usage and then we build accordingly, right? So, but of course, during this period, there have been extreme, I guess, reactions in some cases. So we have to revisit some of the plans we have. But all told, I think our network has held up quite well during this period. So it validates that the investments we've made in the past have served us well during this time. So we will continue to assess the requirements of the market, and we do that actually. Our business group, our technology group, literally meet every time, every week. To align and to see where we should adjust our plans.
Ma'am, in the last shareholders meeting, Mr. Pangilinan said that profits will have to take a back seat for the year. Instead, we'll be protecting cash flows for OPEX funding. Does this mean you will be pulling back on certain projects along the line in the next few months or years?
Yeah, there are some projects that are sort of delayed. Let's say, for example, the launch of 5G that was originally planned for second quarter. So our commercial launch is looking more like towards the end of the year, right? So there are certain things that have to adjust and take a bit of a back seat, right?
Are you channeling these revenues into other projects that you think may better serve the needs of this what we call new normal?
Yes, certainly. At the heart of it, we are a telecoms digital services provider.
Mhm.
We really want to ensure that we do what we our core business very well, right? And we are yeah, effectively with the new normal, we do see new opportunities are rising from things that you mentioned, right? E-learning, e-commerce, e-health, telemedicine. So there are those new opportunities that we would like to serve.
Okay, I have one last question. Ma'am, kailan daw darating dito si Hyun Bin?
Yun, bini yan.
Yeah.
I think
Sa'yo.
may travel, wala nang travel restrictions. Pwede na mag-mass gathering. We need that, right? If he's to come.
Pero kahit na konti lang kami, sama niyo lang ako.
Ma'am, babantayan niyo yung social distancing nitong dalawang to, ha? Baka hindi mag-social distancing yung dalawang yan.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am, would you like to add anything else? Is there any message that you want to put across? How does all of these how do all of these things translate to shareholders, to people who have interest in PLDT?
Yeah, for our shareholders, this is also something that I'm sure they appreciate, that we are able to refinance at quite attractive interest rates. So that gives us the opportunity to lower our interest costs and therefore increase our profits and dividends, hopefully for shareholders as well. But at the end of the day, I think we're quite focused on investing behind the business so that we are able to serve the increasing data requirements of our countrymen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Maraming salamat po, Ms. Annabel Chua, the Chief Finance Officer of PLDT. Ma'am, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you po.
Simple.
Okay, and
Yeah. Maintindihan, ha?
talagang pinasok pa talaga yung yun din.
May headline ka na, Ami. May headline ka na bukas, ha?
Okay. And that's a wrap for tonight. You can also catch One News on Signal Play app and register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. That will be all for this edition of the Cheese. We hope to discuss here would keep the conversation going. I'm Edling of One News.
I'm Mami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
And I'm Robbie Alampay. We are One News.